Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're diving into a specific account. It's from an article about Clint Eastwood's appearance on the Ellen DeGeneres show.
Right.
And really what this story, as told in the article, might suggest about, standing firm in your beliefs.
Yeah, okay. So the article kicks off describing the initial invitation Clint got.
Right.
It was an email asking him onto the show. And the topic was the division of American values. And the source makes a point that this phrasing, especially that word division, apparently, it sort of gave him pause.
And the picture the article paints, well, the way it describes the scene is really something. It puts Clint in his study out in Carmel.
Yeah.
You almost feel the sunlight it mentions. You see the old scripts, the history books, and there's this very specific detail.
The badge?
Exactly, the silver sheriff's badge.
Yeah.
From his father. The article says he saw it not just, as a keepsake, but as this constant reminder that justice is a duty.
A duty. And that seems really central to how the article depicts his decision, then, to accept the invitation.
Yeah.
Well, the source actually quotes him, framing it like this. If they want to mock what's right, let's remind them it's not up for debate. That's the quote given.
Okay. Wow. And the anticipation, it apparently built up pretty fast. By the time Clint got to Burbank, the article mentions, social media was already buzzing.
Oh, yeah. About a potential culture clash, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the source describes Clint himself as, remarkably calm, no sign of worry, didn't seem to be rehearsing anything.
The belief it attributes to him is that truth doesn't need permission to be heard.
Interesting.
And there are these little specific kind of telling details about his arrival, too.
Like what?
Like him apparently refusing the modern jackets a stylist offered.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sticking instead with his own, worn leather one. And that sheriff's badge.
The one from his dad.
Yeah. The article says he pinned it inside his lapel.
Ah.
Not for show, it says, but for himself.
And the article sets up this contrast, then, with Ellen's preparation.
It does. She was apparently prepping her interview cards, and the source claims she told her producer she was actually looking for attention.
For ratings, presumably.
To boost ratings, yeah. So the stage, at least according to this account, was definitely set for, well, maybe not just a conversation, but a clash of approaches.
Right. So our mission, then, in this deep dive, is to really unpack the key moments of that conversation as described in the article.
Exactly. The specific points raised, the reactions mentioned, the whole aftermath.
To understand what this particular source suggests about what it means to stand firm.
Okay, so when Clint actually walked onto the stage, the article notes he moved with that, familiar, steady pace.
Like out of his movies.
Kind of like someone straight out of one of his Westerns, yeah.
Yeah.
And it highlights this specific observation that while Ellen had this big smile, the source suggests it didn't quite reach her eyes, describes them as calculating.
Okay. And the article says Ellen started off friendly enough, some opening remarks, before asking him pretty directly if he felt out of step with where America's headed.
And Clint's reply, according to the source, calm but direct. He apparently said, America doesn't move in one direction. It moves where people with backbone lead it.
Backbone.
The conversation, as the source depicts it, continued with what the article calls a kind of polite tension.
Polite tension, okay.
Ellen apparently suggested Clint was, quote, clinging to a past America has outgrown.
And Clint's response?
Well, after what the article describes as a meaningful pause, he apparently replied, some things aren't meant to be outgrown, they're meant to be upheld.
Wow.
And the source notes that the audience went silent right there, sensing a shift.
Yeah, you can imagine.
So, pressing a bit further, according to the article, Ellen asked if America really still needed, cowboys and sheriffs. Called that whole idea mythology.
Okay, how did he respond to that?
The article describes him leaning forward just slightly and saying, when the law turns into a joke, sometimes the only thing between chaos and order is a man who still believes it matters.
And the silence after that?
The source calls it thick and meaningful.
Okay.
Ellen then apparently tried to, maybe lighten the mood or perhaps dismiss his point. She reportedly said something like, passion without progress is just stubbornness.
Right.
But the article notes Clint's quiet reply was powerful. Progress doesn't mean abandoning your soul.
Abandoning your soul.
The source suggests those words really seem to, fundamentally change the atmosphere in the room.
So the article suggests the conversation then got maybe a bit more pointed?
It seems so.
Huh.
Ellen apparently questioned his compassion. suggesting he refused to see the world change.
Okay.
And the source describes Clint's response as one that hit hard. He apparently said, "Compassion without truth is just another kind of lie."
Oof. Okay.
And the article gives these little glimpses behind the scenes during this exchange.
Oh, yeah. Like
Right.
what?
Like a producer reportedly muttering, "He's flipping the room."
Oh.
And some young technician apparently wondering aloud why Clint sounded, quote, more honest than their usual guest.
Interesting. So Ellen tried to regain control, presumably.
Yet the article says she suggested it was time to let the next generation lead.
And Clint.
His reply, according to the source, was simple. The next generation needs roots, not just wings.
Roots, not just wings.
And the article notes a murmur went through the audience then.
A palpable shift.
Yeah, palpable shift.
Mhm.
Studio staff, audience members. The source says people were quietly acknowledging the impact of what he was saying. The kind of usual narrative it suggests was maybe losing its expected grip.
So what happened when they cut to commercial?
The article describes the scene backstage as, well, chaotic, not the usual laughter and chatter.
Right.
A senior producer is said to have frantically called to pivot the segment.
Pivot.
Yeah, change direction. But the article kind of implies it was already too late to steer things back.
And Clint himself, what was his reaction backstage, according to the source?
Well, his assistant, Jake, apparently told him he was already trending online.
Yeah.
But the source says Clint just, adjusted the sheriff's badge inside his lapel again.
Ah, the badge again.
And commented, "Not about trending, about standing."
About standing. Okay, so let's talk about the aftermath, as the article describes it.
Right. It was significant, according to this account. The clip of his appearance reportedly spread really rapidly across social media.
Yeah, I bet.
And the source makes a point of noting that people from all political backgrounds were expressing respect for his calm strength.
Interesting. Not just one side.
No, that's what the source claims. And news channels apparently debated it.
What, the implications?
Yeah, asking if America was seeing, old values making a comeback. The source highlights this idea of people across the country, just in everyday places, sharing the clip and talking about their own stories, standing for what they believe in.
And what about the show itself? Any impact mentioned?
The article states that Ellen's team later issued an apology. And more broadly, it mentions sponsors reportedly pulling ads and ratings seeing a drop.
Right. And Clint
turned down most interview requests that followed, according to the article.
So this account, the way it's written, really suggests that his quiet strength, as it portrays it,
resonated deeply.
Yeah.
Reminding people, the article implies that standing for what you believe is right can still have a really profound impact.
Especially maybe in a world that often feels dominated by noise and outrage.
Exactly. The article presents Clint here as demonstrating that sometimes the most powerful voice isn't the loudest one, but the one that calmly refuses to be moved.
It illustrates, through this specific narrative anyway, that idea that real strength isn't about how loud you speak, but how firmly you stand by your beliefs.
Right. So, wrapping up this look at the source material, the core dynamic presented is really that encounter.
Yeah.
Differing viewpoints on American values. And the article clearly frames it as a contrast between, on one hand, a desire perhaps for manufactured tension, maybe for ratings, and on the other, this calm, unwavering stance grounded in, deeply held beliefs.
And we've walked through some of those key exchanges the article highlights.
Yeah, the backbone quote.
America moves where people with backbone lead it.
The idea that some things aren't meant to be outgrown. They're meant to be upheld.
That powerful image about the law becoming a joke and the man who still believes.
Right. And progress doesn't mean abandoning your soul.
And compassion without truth is just another kind of lie. The article really does emphasize the impact these specific statements had, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The audience silence, those murmurs backstage, the producer calling to pivot.
It paints a picture of a real ripple effect.
And the aftermath described in the source just reinforces that, the viral clip, the respect mentioned across political lines, the debate it sparked, the personal stories.
So bringing us back to you, the listener, this article, through its portrayal of this one event, definitely suggests something. It suggests that, even in a world focused on, let's say, noise and outrage, there's still maybe a profound power in quiet strength.
In standing firmly by your beliefs.
Yeah. The narrative presented here seems to really emphasize that real strength isn't about how loud you speak, but how firmly you stand by your beliefs. And the implication is that standing for what's right never goes out of style.
Right. So maybe a final thought here for you to consider, just drawing from the themes in the source material.
Okay.
Think about those contrasts the article sets up. Progress versus abandoning your soul, or compassion without truth versus being, well, a lie.
Yeah. Where do you see that tension, that pull between maybe moving forward and upholding certain core beliefs?
In the world around you, maybe, or even, in your own life.
And what does it actually mean based on how this article frames these ideas to have backbone or to have roots?
Something to mull over.
Yeah.